Imagine this. You wake in the dead of night, your room cloaked in an unnatural stillness. The air feels heavy, as if the darkness itself is pressing down on your chest. You try to move, but your body is paralyzed, not by sleep, but by something else, a presence. You feel it before you see it, a shadow, darker than the void around you, detaching itself from the corner of the room. It moves with a deliberate slowness, its form shifting, warping, as though it has no fixed shape. And then it speaks, not in words, but in a voice that echoes directly in your mind, a voice that feels like your own, yet not your own. "You've been running from me for too long," it whispers. "But I am you, and you cannot escape yourself. This is no ordinary nightmare. This is the shadow, the part of you that you've buried, denied, and locked away. The part that knows your darkest desires, your ugliest thoughts, the secrets you've sworn to take to the grave." Carl Jung called it the shadow, the repository of everything we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves. But what if the shadow isn't just a metaphor? What if it's real? A living, breathing entity that exists within us, waiting for the right moment to emerge. History is riddled with tales of people who confronted their shadows and were never the same. The Salem witch trials, where ordinary villagers turned on each other in a frenzy of paranoia and self-destruction. The Stanford prison experiment, where seemingly good people became monsters overnight. The countless unsolved murders where the killer's motive remains a mystery, as if they were driven by something beyond reason, beyond humanity. What if these weren't just isolated incidents of madness? What if they were glimpses of the shadow, breaking through, tearing apart the fragile veneer of civilization? And what if right now your shadow is watching you, waiting for its moment to strike? The question isn't whether you can escape it. The question is, what will it do when it finds you? The shadow is not a figment of imagination. It is a psychological truth, a force as real as the air you breathe. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who first named it, described the shadow as the dark side of the psyche, the sum of all, the traits, desires, and impulses we reject about ourselves. But here's the chilling part. The shadow doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. It grows stronger, festering in the depths of our unconscious until it finds a way to surface. Jung believed that the shadow is born from our need to conform. From childhood, we are taught to suppress our anger, our greed, our lust, our envy. We are told to be kind, selfless, and virtuous. But these rejected parts of ourselves don't vanish. They coalesce into a hidden entity, a mirror image of who we could have been. And when it emerges, it does so with a vengeance. Friedrich Nietzsche understood this too. He spoke of the abyss that stares back at you when you gaze into it. The shadow is that abyss. It is the part of you that thrives in chaos, that revels in destruction. It is the voice that whispers, "What if you let go? What if you stopped caring? What if you gave in?" History is littered with examples of the shadow's power. Consider the case of the zombie of the Andes, a man who, after surviving a plane crash in 1972, resorted to cannibalism to stay alive. When rescued, he claimed it wasn't him who committed the act, it was his other self. Or take the infamous Milgram experiment, where ordinary people administered what they believed were lethal electric shocks to strangers, simply because an authority figure told them to. These weren't monsters. They were people like you and me, people whose shadows were unleashed under the right conditions. The horror lies in its inevitability. The shadow is not an anomaly. It is a fundamental part of being human. And the more we deny it, the more it festers, waiting for the moment when our defenses crumble. But here's the question that should keep you awake at night. What happens when the shadow isn't just an individual force, but a collective one? What happens when an entire society's shadows rise to the surface? The shadow doesn't just haunt individuals, it haunts civilizations. History is a graveyard of societies that were torn apart by their own darkness. The witch hunts of early modern Europe, where thousands were Jonestown massacre, where over 900 people willingly drank poisoned Kool-Aid, convinced it was the only way to escape a world they believed was irredeemably corrupt. These were not isolated incidents of madness. They were the shadows of entire communities breaking free and wreaking havoc. The horror is not just in the acts themselves, but in the realization that they could happen again, that they are happening right now in ways we refuse to see. The shadow is not a relic of the past. It is a living, breathing force, shaping our world in ways we cannot comprehend. And the most terrifying part, the shadow is not just out there. It is in here, in you, in me, in all of us. But what if there is a way to confront the shadow? What if, instead of running from it, we could face it, not to destroy it, but to understand it? Carl Jung believed that the path to wholeness lies in integrating the shadow, in bringing it into the light of consciousness. This is not an easy task. It requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to confront the darkest parts of ourselves. But the rewards are profound. History offers glimpses of those who have succeeded. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, found meaning in the midst of unimaginable suffering by confronting his own darkness and transforming it into a source of strength. Aldous Huxley, in his exploration of psychedelics, discovered that the shadow is not an enemy to be defeated, but a teacher to be understood. Even Nietzsche, for all his talk of the abyss, believed that facing our darkness is the key to becoming who we truly are. The process begins with awareness. You must learn to recognize the shadow in your thoughts, your actions, your dreams. It is the voice that tells you to lash out in anger, to indulge in selfishness, to give in to despair. But it is also the source of your creativity, your passion, your vitality. The shadow is not evil. It is simply the part of you that has been denied. Integration is not about erasing the shadow, but about balancing it. It is about acknowledging your flaws without being consumed by them, embracing your desires without being controlled by them. This is not a one-time event, but a lifelong journey, and it is not without risks. The shadow is powerful, and confronting it can feel like staring into the abyss. But the alternative is far worse, because if you don't face your shadow, it will face you, and when it does, you may not like what you see. Here is the ultimate truth, the revelation that will haunt you long after you've finished working. The shadow is not just a part of you, it is you. It is the raw, unfiltered essence of who you are, stripped of all pretense and illusion. And the horror lies not in its existence, but in what it reveals about the human condition. We like to believe that we are in control of our lives, that our choices are guided by reason and morality. But the shadow exposes this as a lie. It shows us that beneath the surface, we are driven by forces we barely understand, forces that are as much a part of us as our beating hearts. The shadow is the truth we cannot escape, the mirror that reflects our deepest fears and desires. And yet there is a strange beauty in this revelation. By confronting the shadow, we gain the power to transform it. We can take the darkness within us and use it to create light. This is the paradox at the heart of Jung's philosophy. The shadow is both our greatest enemy and our greatest ally. It is the source of our suffering, but also the key to our salvation. But beware, this knowledge comes at a price. Once you have seen the shadow, you can never unsee it. You will carry it with you always, a constant reminder of the fragility of your humanity. And you will know deep down that the line between good and evil is not as clear